This is the Prestigious Initiative. Welcome. I'm Chris Bean. Here with me is Mr. Jim Marshall as we continue our dive through the world of Septemics. Jim, how are you today?
Happy to see you.
All right, so last we left off, we did the scale of choice, and today we are going to be going over the scale of permeation. All right, Jim, take it away.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know who I am the discoverer of hitherto unknown natural phenomena, which greatly improve the understanding of people, from which I constructed a revolutionary practical philosophic system called Septemics and published it in the book Septemics, Hierarchies of Human Phenomena. And today we're going to talk about some of the content of that book. This is the scale of choice, which we covered in our last interview. So let's proceed to the next one. Chris?
Yep.
All right. Okay. Scale of permeation. So, permeation is a synonym of pervade. Permeation is the basic action of a spiritual being. The reason that you get sensation from your body is that you are permeating it. You, as a spiritual being, are permeating the body. When you die, you stop permeating it, meaning you cease your permeation of the body. That is what death is. Everybody does some amount of permeation, and this occurs on a scale. And with all the rest of these scales, whether you realize it or not, you have a place on this scale. Now, this is a spiral scale, which means there is an apparent congruence between level 1 and level 7, which can lead you to make a catastrophic error in misassessing somebody, thinking he's at 1 when he's at 7 or vice versa. This is a quantum scale, meaning there's no intervening gradation between the levels. You're at level 1 or you're at level 2. There's nothing in between there. And it's a specific scale, meaning it's context driven. It only makes sense in some context. So how am I permeating my wife? How am I permeating my son? How am I permeating my boss? How am I permeating my church? And so forth. It has no general meaning. So you can't simply find somebody on this in a general sense. You have to put in a context. Now, as with many of the other scales, this has a plus minus built into it. The plus and minus does not mean good or bad. It means inflow or outflow. Outflow is represented by plus, inflow is represented by minus. Now, from a psychological point of view, it makes more sense, instead of saying inflow, outflow, saying reach and withdraw. When you are reaching something, that's an outflow. And when you are withdrawing from something, it's an inflow on a human level. And this is helpful to you in spotting somebody's level, because sometimes you can see that somebody is on an outflow, and that tells you he's either at 1, 3, 5, or 7. So let's start at the bottom. Must permeate is the lowest level. This is compulsion. When a person is compulsive, what that means is he must permeate the thing. So this is like Jack the Ripper going around London murdering young ladies. He's compelled to do that. It's clearly an outflow, right? He gets a knife and he assaults them and kills them. That's definitely an outflow. He must permeate them. In this case, he's permeating them with the blade of a knife, but you could permeate something with other things. Hitler is an example of somebody who must permeate. If you watch his speeches, he is compulsive. He's not allowing for any give or take, inflow, outflow. He must permeate that crowd. Up from that is unable to permeate. So unable to permeate is not as bad, and that is succumbing. When you are succumbing, you are unable to permeate something. So you have a guy who's dying. Well, he's unable to permeate his body anymore. That's why he's succumbing, and soon he will die. So obviously he's withdrawing from that area. When you are succumbing, you are withdrawing. So that is simply unable to permeate. It's not as bad as must permeate. Up from that is able to permeate. Well, able to permeate does not mean you are permeating. It means you could, although you aren't. So this is indifference. Indifference is an outflow. When you have an indifferent attitude towards something, you're not withdrawn from it. You're just outflowing to it in an indifferent way. So you have the ability to permeate it, even though you're not. Up from that is unwilling to permeate. So this is somebody who says, no, I'm not going to permeate this thing. This is what antipathy is. When a person is antipathetic, that is a withdrawal. He's withdrawn from the area to which he's antipathetic. So let's say you have a guy in the Old West who hated Native Americans, right? He has an antipathy. He's withdrawn from them. So he's unwilling to permeate them. Up from that is willing to permeate. Now, this is getting into what we think of as like normal behavior. Willing to permeate is empathy. So you see a cute little dog, right? And you say, gee, what a nice dog. You have empathy for him. You want to pet him and feed him and play with him. That is clearly an outflow. You're outflowing to that dog. You're willing to permeate that dog. Or let's say you have a beautiful garden. You're willing to permeate that garden. Okay? So you have empathy for it. You don't want somebody to trample your flowers. See? You have empathy for them. Up from that is can permeate at will. This is what we call success. When a person is successful, he can permeate at will. Now, notice this is an inflow. Well, how is success an inflow? He can permeate at will. He's not on a permanent state of permeation. He can permeate it when he wants to permeate it. So let's say you take Tom Brady, the great quarterback. When it's time for him, he calls the play, he takes that hike, he knows he can permeate that defense. Okay? So that's confidence. And a person who's successful is confident. He's done it before and he's going to do it again at will. And up from that, now, by the way, that does not mean at that moment he'll be success because he's trying to complete the pass and he might not complete the pass. That's okay. That's part of the game. That's baked in the cake. Okay. But he'll do it again. And if you look at his track record, he's been remarkably successful. So this is an inflow. He can permeate this at will. Then above that is complete permeation, which is an outflow. And that's power. Now, many people get power mixed up with things like compulsion or abuse or domination. That's not what I mean. A person who is being domineering lacks power. If he had power, he wouldn't be domineering. And if you look at people who actually have power, they're quite relaxed because they have power. They don't have to be pushy like Hitler was. So that's what power is. Power is complete permeation. And a good example of this is the power of the Beatles over the pop music world in the 60s. John Lennon described this when he said, we had a license to kill, which enabled them to go into the studio and do things that had never been done before. And they changed the face of music. And this was conspicuous with Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, where they did something nobody had ever done before. It completely changed the musical landscape, or at least the popular musical landscape. Clearly, this was a big outflow, okay? And also when he said, we're bigger than Jesus, which was an impolitic thing to say, which got him in a lot of trouble with enthusiastic Christians. But that's what he was saying. We have complete permeation. They had power. Now, there were 2 times in the 60s when the top 5 selling records on the Billboard 100 were all Beatle records. In other words, numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 were all Beatle records. Nobody else had ever done that. Nobody else has ever even come close to that. They did it twice. They shipped a double album called The Beatles, which was white, had nothing on it. Okay, and it went platinum before it got to the stores. Okay, that's power. It's not domination. It's power. It's actual power. So that's what the scale is about. Any questions?
No questions. Very, very eloquently described and easy to understand. Very good. We'll move to the next one. Yes.
Okay. Yes.
All right. Scale of thought. Here
Okay.
we go.
The scale of thought. Now, there are 7 levels of human thought. This is, I'm sure, a new idea for almost everybody. People think of thought in a sort of a generalized way. Oh, well, he's thinking, or I'm thinking. There are levels of thought. Now, this is the linear scale, meaning there's no apparent congruence between levels 1 and 7, which makes it easy. You can't mix those 2 up. It's quantum, meaning there's nothing in between. Either you're at level 2 or you're at level 3, period. There's nothing in between. You go from level to level, if you do, instantaneously. And on a human level, that might mean a billionth of a second. Specific. It's a specific scale, meaning it has a context always. It does not have a general meaning. You can't just say this guy thinks at this level. You have to give it a context. How does he think about his wife? How does he think about his son? How does he think about his work? How does he think about his golf club? How does he think about his garden? Okay, so there are different levels, and so you will see this in a person, and you'll see it change. So you talk to a guy about his business, and he'll be at a certain level. If he's good at it, he'll be at a higher level. And then you talk to him about, let's say, his personal life, which could be a train wreck, and he's going to be thinking at a lower level. And you'll see it. You'll see it change right in front of you. Now, the axis, the dotted vertical line, goes from total permeation and knowledge, which is above level 1, because it's an unattainable absolute, and no permeation and knowledge below level 7, also an unattainable absolute. So you can get very close to total permeation and knowledge, but you can't quite get there as a human. That would be a divine state. And similarly, no matter how low you go, you're never at no permeation or knowledge because you're still alive. Now, you have to realize here that this links permeation and knowledge. What is knowledge? Knowledge is permeation of an area. So if you talk to a guy, let's say he has a doctorate in mathematics, he knows all about mathematics. He's permeating mathematics, so he knows about it. So if a person doesn't know about something, it means he's not permeating it. This gives you a formula for success. If you want to know more about something, permeate it. If you fail to permeate it, you're not going to have knowledge. So let's say you have a person who is, for example, afraid of dogs. That person is not permeating dogs. He doesn't want to permeate dogs. He's just afraid of them. So he doesn't know a lot about dogs. If you talk about somebody who loves dogs, they know all kinds of things about dogs that this other guy doesn't know because they are permeating dogs. Then let's look at level 4. There's the horizontal line that separates sane from insane. This occurs in many scales. We have sane behavior at the top and insane behavior at the bottom. Now, of course, the higher you go, the more sane it is. The lower you go, the more insane it is. So there's a gradation. It's not binary. But that is the separating line between the two. So if a person is thinking at level 5, 6, or 7, he's insane on that subject, more so as he's at lower levels. If a person is thinking at 1, 2, or 3, he's sane on that subject. If he's at 4, it's sort of neither. It's not particularly sane or insane. And that is sort of the way what we think of as a normal person's thinking is at that level. And now I'm going to talk about the different levels and describe them, and you'll see what I mean. So, at 7 is denial. Okay? This person denies, meaning he says something is not there when it's actually there. If you say something is not there when it's not there, that's not denial. You're just observing that it's not there. But if it's there and you say it's not there, you're ignoring it, which is what denial is. So this is like a guy, every night he goes home from work, he drinks a 6-pack of beer, he passes out on the couch, gets up the next day, goes to work. Now, if you're his buddy, you might say to him, let me ask you, Bill, I know you've been drinking for a long time. You think you might be an alcoholic? Say, oh, no, I'm not an alcoholic. He's in denial about it. See, he passes out from alcohol every night. And he's destroying his liver and his brain cells. He is not up to facing that fact. He's just ignoring it. You can see it, but he can't see it. So his thinking on that subject is level 7 thinking. So denial is a type of thought. Up from that is disassociate. This is not quite as crazy. Disassociate, you're rejecting something. So you're permeating it enough to admit that it exists, and then you say no. So this is the person who he disassociates from something. Like, for example, you could have a Democrat and he doesn't want to have anything to do with Republicans. If you're a Republican, he won't talk to you. And it could go the other way around, too. They reject you, whatever the reason is. This guy's in some cult. I'm not going to associate with him. I reject it. I reject him. I reject the cult. He disassociates from it. So you see, there's very little permeation. There's just enough permeation there to know that this thing exists and he doesn't like it. That's it. So his knowledge is minuscule. Up from that is identify. Now, this is a common thing. You see this all the time. This is the guy who says all women are the same, or a woman who says all men are the same. In both cases, they are equating all the members of the gender. So there are approximately 4 billion women on Earth, okay? And this guy is saying that each one is like every other one, which is provably false. I actually know somebody who said to me gratuitously on several occasions, all men are beasts. Now, that's crazy. Clearly, not all men are beasts. Are some men beasts? Well, yeah, maybe some men are beasts. I think it's probably a very small percentage. But to say that they're all beasts, that's clearly not sane. Now, it's saner than simply rejecting them out of hand, because this person is at least observing them enough to come to some conclusion, even though it's a completely wrong conclusion. And as I point out in the book, anytime you say that this thing equals this thing, you're always wrong, unless you're talking about mathematics. If you say that the area of a circle is pi r squared, that is mathematically correct. But if you say that every rose is like every other rose, you're wrong. Every rose is unique. Every tulip is unique. So as soon as a person identifies, you know right away they're wrong because no two things are the same. You might even get this down to a molecular level. You might say, well, all gold atoms are the same. No, they're in different locations. And some of them are bonded and some of them are not. So in a human frame of reference, anytime a person is identifying, he's wrong and he's not quite sane on that subject. So that is a red flag. Next up is associate. This is what normal people do. So, just say you're standing in line at the bank. You see the guy next to you has a LA Dodgers hat on. So you say to him, "Are you a Dodgers fan?" He says, "Yes." So you say, "Oh, I'm a Dodgers fan too. I went to see them in April." "Oh, really? Yeah, I have tickets." So you see, that's comparing. I'm showing you mine, and you show me yours. This is normal behavior. So two guys talk about golf. You play golf? "Yeah, I shoot a little golf." "Well, what's your handicap?" See, they're comparing. He's going to tell you his, you tell me yours. It's not sane and it's not insane. It's kind of neutral. These people are just associating. There's enough permeation there to associate. And the association goes far enough to be able to compare. So you can say, well, okay, this candidate says this candidate says that. You're not embracing them, you're comparing them. See? But in order to compare them, you have to associate with them, as opposed to the guy who refuses to watch any of the debates. He doesn't know what any of them say. He hasn't heard it. He's not comparing. Okay? Up at level 3, we're getting now into people of a higher intelligence. 3 is differentiate. This is taught by differentiation, where you can see things that this candidate says this candidate says that, and this third candidate says another thing. See, this person is analyzing. Analyze means loosen. He is separating these things. Now, in order to differentiate, you have to permeate something pretty well. So, like somebody who knows how to pick fruit, he goes to the market and there's 200 tomatoes, and he's going to pick 2. So he looks at them, touches them, he says, okay, I want this one. See, he's differentiating that tomato from the other 199 tomatoes. So he's analyzing this. Now, examples in fiction are Sherlock Holmes and Mr. Spock. What do we see in that literature, in that fiction? We see a person who's analyzing. He's differentiating. There's a famous story about Star Trek, which was largely responsible for its success in the 60s, where, as usual, all hell is breaking loose because the Enterprise is under attack, in some mortal danger, and Spock, the science officer, observes something and says, "Fascinating." That was his comment. Now, that was kind of an ad lib where he said, "Why don't I just say fascinating?" Okay, see, he was analyzing this thing. He wasn't all upset like everybody else. His mental state was higher. Everyone else was running around madly trying to deal with this thing while he was analyzing it. And of course, if you read all the Sherlock Holmes stories, which I did, all the stories, I've seen all the versions of it. It's all about analyzing. So Holmes, it's all about how does this smart man differentiate? He sees this, he says, no, it's not that. It's this over here. The police don't see that. That's why he solves the crime for them. Up from that is duplicate. Now, most people apparently do not realize that learning is a process of duplication. So your algebra teacher shows you how to perform a certain, like, for example, how to calculate the slope of a line. You duplicate that in your mind. Now you've got it. When it comes up on the test, he says, calculate the slope of this line. You've duplicated it from him, and you now can do it. So most people have difficulty with learning, in case you haven't noticed. There's very few people who are very good at learning. And the reason for that is they are not at level 2 on this scale. In order to duplicate, you have to be at level 2. So, for example, I have had many people, hundreds of people working for me over the years. And I learned a long time ago, I write down specific, clear, simply stated instructions. This is what I want you to do. Okay. And for example, with a housekeeper, I give them a list and it tells you what to do, what not to do. There has never been a single time when my housekeeper did exactly what was on the list. It has never happened. So I give them a list. I say, I'd like you to read this. Tell me if you understand. They say, oh, yeah, I understand it. Okay. And then, because I don't want to invalidate anybody or argue with them, after they leave, I look around and say, well, they didn't do that, and they didn't do that, and they didn't do this the way I told them. So what does that mean? It means they are not at level 2. Well, that's why they're cleaning houses instead of writing code for Google. You see? Now, up from that, at the top of the scale is create. This is the highest level of thought, creative thought. So when Einstein created the theories of relativity, one came out in 1905, one came out in 1915, he created this thing. He was inspired. Like you can say, well, where did this come from? In other words, how did he get this? There was some inspiration there. Nobody else had figured this out before. Only he got it. And then he explained it in a paper. And then all the physics and math people got a hold of it and studied it and duplicated it. They were able to duplicate it because they were at level 2. So that was inspiration. It was creative thought. This is much more obvious when you talk about art. So, for example, I saw Led Zeppelin once at Madison Square Garden. And there was a time in the show when Jimmy Page went on stage by himself and played the guitar for 20 minutes. By himself. No accompaniment of any kind. It was awesome. It was just him, his Les Paul, his Marshall stack, and 20,000 people. Okay? And you could see that he was just making it up as he went along. He played some of this, and then he transitioned into that, and then he played, and then he recapitulated. He was, and I've known many great musicians, and they have that ability. They can just pick up the instrument or sit down at the instrument and just play. I know a famous jazz musician, now deceased, invited me to his house on a Sunday afternoon. So we're all sitting around with our drinks and our food, and he's got a grand piano in his living room, comes out with a cigarette hanging from his mouth, sits down at the piano and just plays. Nothing was said. He didn't say, now I'm going to play. There was no music. Nobody made any requests. There were no recognizable songs. He just made it up as he went along. And if you knew this person, which I did very well, you could see that. This was not subtle. He was just doing his thing. It was awesome. He played for like 20 or 30 minutes, just nonstop, went from one motif into the next, one key into the next, went from major into minor, all different styles, he just made it up. That's inspiration. That's how Tesla figured out the alternating current motor. He thought it up in his head. He was inspired. He saw the problems with the direct current motor, which had already been in existence. And he said, wait, there's got to be a better way to do this. And he was inspired. And he saw the alternating current. Well, he has explained all of this. So this is not speculation. But he saw in his mind exactly how it would work. And then he just went into 3 dimensions and constructed what was in his mind. He created this thing from nothing. Okay, that's inspiration. So that's the highest level of thought. So when you have a genius, that's somebody who can function at creative thought, where he's so good at it that it's beyond learning. He just creates it. He is the source, you might say, of that meme. So that's the scale of thought. Any questions?
I actually do have a question on this one.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. In relation to create and inspire, are there some people that have a higher propensity to be on that level one in general in their life, and others are not? So from what I understand, it seems like creative people, like there are creative people and there are less creative people. The less creative people can create in some areas, but in general they're not very creative. But the creative type, they're creating things all the time, left, right, all the time. Is there a greater propensity for some people to be in that create inspiration type of modality of being than others, or can that other person raise up to that level, on a quantum level?
Well, let me say this. As with all the other scales, you can only go to an adjacent level. If you're at 3, you can only go to 2 or 4. There are no other possibilities. So in order to get to 1, you have to be at 2. So if you were to study, for example, Tesla, you would see that he was a brilliant student. He duplicated the science and technology and engineering that was taught to him. The next thing is when a person, I'm sorry, somebody's knocking at my door, and I'm going to ignore it.
Okay.
When a person learns how to function at a level, he'll say, oh, I see. And now he knows how to do this. So let's say you have a child. At some point, he learns how to duplicate in school. So he learns how to duplicate in English. So then he says, no, I'm going to do this in math too. I'm going to do this in history too. You see? So you sort of learn a level and then you tend to occupy that level because you can, because it's a higher level. In other words, if you're a student and you learn how to duplicate, you say, now I know how to learn. And you go into an area and you have this level of thinking that you utilize to absorb this material. I think I answered your question. Did I?
Yeah, no, yeah, I understand. So really, in order to be at that creative level, I need to first be at the learning level where I'm duplicating, and then from there I can be at the creating level once I've
Right.
learned how to duplicate and been at that level. And so then, striving towards learning will lead hopefully into being able to create via inspiration.
Well, I don't know about the hopefully part. Either you're at a level or you're not at a level. So I do know there are, I have a friend who has a Master of Music degree. And we played music together. He was a very good musician, and then he became a music teacher. And he got his bachelor's and his master's in music from a prestigious school. And he said to me one day, if you can still play after you leave the school, that's really something. So he was kind of suggesting that all of this duplicating kind of undermines your creativity.
Hmm.
Whereas you have somebody like Jimi Hendrix, I don't think he ever took a guitar lesson. I know he didn't read music, but I saw him play 3 times. He was clearly creative. He was making it up as he went along. Same thing with Eric Clapton. I saw him play, and it was obvious to me that that solo that he just played, he never played before, and he's never going to play it again. Now, is there some similarity? Yes, there's some. But all artists have some similarity because they're in a certain genre and a certain style. Uh, they have kind of a vocabulary that they use, which is why, you look at 100 Monet paintings and you can say, yeah, these are all Monet paintings. You know, so what was he creating when he made that painting? Yes, he was creating. He looks at this thing, this cathedral, and he paints it, and it's creative. So his vision of it, it doesn't look like a photograph of the thing, but you get it. It's creative. That's what Impressionism is about. So he clearly was inspired, and sometimes he would paint the exact same object multiple times, and you can see the different versions of the same thing, and they're not identical. So you can see that he was, on Tuesday he was inspired one day, and on Wednesday he was inspired another way. So I don't know if I answered your question or not.
No, I think from those two answers, I think I can put together
Okay,
what is meaningful to me in regard to duplication and create via inspiration. We're ready to
right.
move. We're ready
So,
to move to the
all
next
right.
one if you're ready.
Okay, so let me just finish with saying the way to use this is observe somebody and take that into account. I discuss this in the book. If you're hiring somebody uh, to take care of animals in a veterinary hospital, and that person tells you all dogs are the same, don't hire that person. That person is at level 5. The truth is that every dog is unique, which is the exact opposite. See, so this tells you who to hire, who to fire, who to stay away from, right? If a guy's uh, going out with a girl and the girl tells him all men are the same, that's not somebody he should go out with. She's not quite sane on the subject of men, which is why she equates them all. So it's really useful. And with yourself, spot where is my thinking? You know, if you catch yourself in one of these uh, identifications, where you're saying, oh, all those liberals are the same. Uh-oh, that's level 5. You want to move yourself up to 4, where you can say, well, this guy thinks this guy thinks that, this guy behaves this way, and this guy behaves that way. You'll know they're all liberals. So then you're comparing them, which is much better than identifying them. So and then you could move yourself up to differentiate how you can analyze this. So you can move yourself up the scale. But before you can move yourself up the scale, you have to see where you are. And of course, this is context driven. So you can use this in any area of your life. So you can look at an area that you're having trouble in and think, well, if I'm having trouble here, I must be thinking about this the wrong way. So you look at it, see, and then you'll say, oh, I can see I'm disassociating from this. No wonder I'm having trouble. See, I'm rejecting this. And you can move yourself up to 5. Now, 5 is still a little bit taffy, but it's not as bad as disassociate because you're permeating it a little bit. You're permeating it enough to equate things, which is not as bad as simply rejecting them. So use this for yourself and on others.
Very good. Here we go. We'll move to the scale of identity.
Okay, so the word identity comes from the Latin word idem, which means same. So when you identify things, you're saying they're the same. Now, as I point out in the book, anytime, mathematics aside, anytime you equate two things, you're always wrong. Because no two things are the same. This molecule is here and this molecule is there. So you can have two hydrogen molecules. And you can say, well, they're identical. No, they're not. This one is here and this one is there. They're in different spaces. And also you can say, well, this one existed in 1850 and this one exists in 2000. So they're in different times and different spaces. So they're not identical. So this is a scale in which everybody enters at level 1 and then descends the scale as his perception deteriorates. In other words, the more you embrace the idea of identity, the less your perception is. That's why you identify things. You see, if your perception is really good, you look at two roses and you say, oh, this rose is nice, this rose is nice, and you see they're different. They come from the same bush and you cut them at the same time, but they're not identical. See, that takes some perception. Somebody who has less perception will say, well, they all look the same to me. And that person's perception is not good. So this brings us to the axis on the right. What are we measuring on this scale? We're measuring perception. This is a scale of perception. So to the degree that your perception is good, you do not identify. And as you descend the scale, you identify in lower and lower ways until you get to the bottom where there's no perception. So you have maximal perception at top, not infinite perception, maximal perception, and at the bottom, no perception. So you can have a person, oh, the guy's unconscious. He has no perception. Or he's deaf, dumb, and blind. He has no perception. Okay, so that's what we're measuring. Now remember, anytime you have a scale, you're measuring something, right? You have a yardstick, it measures inches. So you have to know, what are we measuring? So the axis is very important. It tells you how to improve this yourself on this scale. You do it by improving your perception. You observe. See, if you observe something, you get closer to the truth of what it is. And when you get closer to the truth, you see that it's not identical to anything else. So let's look at the type. This is a spiral scale, meaning there's an apparent congruence between levels 1 and 7. Level 7 is no identity, and level 1 is no identity. But at level 7, it's no identity possible, which is a very low state. And at level 1, it's no need for an identity. This is a person who is above having an identity. So be careful not to mix those two up. People sometimes make that mistake. So let's say you have some guru who is meditating, right? He can sit still and meditate for 8, 10, 12 hours. Okay? You say, this guy's oblivious. No, he's not. He's not oblivious. He's extroverted. He's just not moving around. So that's a place where you can mistake 1 and 7. Now, this is a quantum scale, meaning there's no intervening gradation. You're at level 1 or you're at level 2. And if you change levels instantaneously, meaning proverbially in the blink of an eye. You're at one level, something happens in your consciousness, and suddenly you're at another level. There's no gradation here in between. And this is a specific scale, meaning there's no general identity. It makes no sense for a person to have just a general level on this. It has to have a context. So, what is his identity in his family? What is his identity as regards politics? What is his identity as regards his bowling league? Whatever it is, he has some identity, and it has a context. Now, it says here this scale aligns with the scale of allegiance. This is one of several scales that has an individual manifestation and a group manifestation. Now, the book is divided into book one, which is individual scales, and book two, which is group scales. So there are a few scales that manifest individually and also manifest as a group manifestation. This is one of them. So the scale of allegiance is in a sense, the group version of the scale of identity. Now, the word identity is inherently solipsistic. In other words, you think of yourself in a certain way. You have a certain identity. I'm a Christian or I'm a Buddhist. That's an identity. Now, the scale of allegiance necessarily applies somebody else is involved with you. Because in order to have allegiance to whom or to what? See, you have to have allegiance to some group or person. And so that is why the scale has these two different manifestations. But you'll see if you try to use these scales that they're very similar. But we use one in a group context and use one in individual context. Now, this is another one of the many scales that has this polarity built into it, plus, minus, plus, minus, plus, minus. So if you're level 1, 3, 5, or 7, you are withdrawing from something. And if you're level 2, 4, or 6, you are reaching something. That is what the plus and minus means. So minus is an inflow, plus is an outflow. This is a clue to what level the person is at. Sometimes you can just see that a person is outflowing. And when you see that, then you've narrowed it down to 2, 4, or 6. Or you can see that a person is withdrawing. You see, if a person is withdrawn in this area, he's at 1, 3, 5, or 7. So that helps you to spot the level. So everybody enters this at level 1. So a person comes to some context, he's extroverted. So let's say you have a guy, he's never been to a soccer match, he's never even seen soccer on TV. Okay, this is a new thing to him. He knows the word soccer, and he knows sort of the idea that you have these guys kicking a ball around. And that's all he knows. So he's extroverted in that area. In other words, he's not looking inward to say, who am I regarding soccer? He doesn't have an orientation regarding soccer. He doesn't know enough about it. It's a foreign thing to him. It's a new thing. So this is how you start out. So if you say to a guy, there's a basketball game on TV, right? And you say to him, whom are you rooting for? Well, say, I'm not rooting for anybody. I don't watch basketball. So he's just extroverted. In other words, he sees what's going on. This team scored, and then that team scored, and he doesn't have a need for an identity. He doesn't feel he has to be a Knicks fan or a Celtics fan. You see, he's extroverted. So he's, in a sense, withdrawn from this area. He hasn't really entered it, so he's withdrawn from it. So now, if he goes down one level, he goes to certain of identity. So the guy gets involved with basketball, and then he says, I'm a Celtics fan. So now you show up a year later, he's got a Celtics jacket. He's got tickets to the Celtics game. He watches them on TV. See, this is an outflow. He's reaching for the Celtics. This guy's perception is not as good. We talk about objectivity. You have two sports fans. This guy's a Celtics fan. This guy's a Chicago Bulls fan. And they try to have a discussion. Those guys do not have complete objectivity because they're fans. They're certain of an identity. See, so the Bulls fan is going to say, "Don't talk to me about was I'm forgetting the guy's name because I'm not a basketball fan. Don't talk to me about that player. Michael Jordan is the greatest basketball player who ever lived, right? He was a Chicago Bull. He's not objective about that. He's certain of his identity. Just like, if a guy's in the Marine Corps for that guy is the greatest thing on earth. I'm not saying that everybody in the Marine Corps thinks that way, but most of the people in it think that way. All right. The Army, the Navy, the Air Force, they're inferior to us. They can't do what we can do. See, they lose their objectivity. Now, this is contrition. Why is this contrition? When a person is certain of his identity, he will offer things up. This is the person who gives you money and time. So let's say you have a guy, he's a confirmed Republican. Every election time, he sends the money, he volunteers for them. You see, that's contrition. In other words, he's saying he would not be making those offerings if he didn't have some sense of contrition. Yes, I need to make sacrifices. I need to skip my 6-pack of beer this week and send that money to the Republican Party. That's how he thinks of it. That's an outflow, which is what it says there. See? So this is what a contrite person is. Now, if you go down to the next level, now you have the guy become uncertain of it. Who says, maybe I shouldn't be a Celtics fan. Maybe they're really not the. So he's going down the scale. He's become indecisive. He has withdrawn from the Celtics, which is why there's a minus there. His perception is less now because he's withdrawing from them. And anytime you withdraw from something, your perception becomes less. You see, if you talk to, let's say, a New York Yankees fan, he knows everything. He knows who the starting team is. He knows everybody in the bullpen. He knows the ERA of all the starting pitchers. He's perceiving them. You see, he watches them carefully. He's certain of his identity. He's reaching. But somebody who says, hell with the Yankees. They haven't won a World Series in whatever it is, 15 years. I'm not really enthused about this. See, he's withdrawing from them. And as soon as he's withdrawn, he's not going to pay attention to all those details. See, they could get a new manager. He doesn't even know because he's become indecisive about it. Now, if it goes further than that, below that, you go into a wrong identity. Now, this is a wrong identity from the viewpoint of the identity that he was certain about at level 2. Because remember, you descend the scale. So the guy marries a woman, right? And they promise to love, honor, and obey till death do us part. Well, then he becomes uncertain about her and he goes into a wrong identity. And he takes on the traits of an enemy. So, for example, he starts going out with somebody else. He has a mistress on the side. See, he's reaching toward the mistress. From the viewpoint of the wife, that's an enemy. That's why she would get mad at him. So he keeps it a secret so she won't get mad at him. So he's on this outflow, which is a wrong identity. It's the identity of Mary's boyfriend rather than Gertrude's husband. See? So he's got a wrong identity there. Now, if it goes below that, it goes into lost identity. He just loses this identity completely. That is what betrayal is. So betrayal is an inflow. In other words, he withdraws from the area. I don't want to have anything to do with this anymore. We're done. Okay? So he had promised to love, honor, and obey that was part. Now he's saying, I don't want to see you ever again. He lost his identity as Gertrude's husband. It's not there anymore. See, that's different from 4. He's not on an outflow of some kind. He is on a withdrawal. He has lost that identity. And from the viewpoint of Gertrude, he has betrayed her. Now, if it goes further than that, he becomes disoriented. If you talk to somebody about something and he's at this level, he is not cogent. You get a lot of blah, 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 blah. He cannot give you succinct, clear answers about anything. So this guy goes into a therapist, right? Because he's had a divorce, right? And usually that has negative consequences like paying $50,000 to a divorce lawyer and maybe not able to go into his house anymore, right? So he goes into a therapist, and the therapist says, tell me about this. And he goes, hamana, like Jackie Gleason. He's not cogent on this subject. Why? Because his perception is very low. He's not even at betrayal anymore. He's not going and saying, yeah, I betrayed my wife. He's below that. He's just in chaos. He doesn't know what to think. He doesn't know what to do. This is the type of guy who, what the therapist says to him, well, tell me about your love life. He says, what love life? So this chaos is an outflow. This is the type of guy, he'll yell, he'll throw things, he'll go into tirades. Those are outflows, but it's all chaos. So the guy who loses his temper and screams all these stupid things, he's disoriented. His perception is so low, he doesn't know what the hell is going on. Now, if it goes lower than that, you go into oblivion, which is level 7. No identity possible. This guy can't even answer the question because his perception is gone. He has no perception. This is the type of guy the therapist could say to him, well, what do you think you should do about this? He says, I don't know. See, he's oblivious. His perception is so low that he can't possibly have an identity. So if, let's say, his friend says to him, Joe, let me introduce you to my girlfriend's sister. She's really nice. He'll say, no, I'm not ready for that. See? Because he's at no possible identity. He can't even have the identity of a beau. He's below that. He's just going to stay in his house, eat potato chips, watch TV. See? On this subject, his perception has ceased. Now, this is what you see in an insane asylum. You have a catatonic schizophrenic. He's sitting in a room. Even if you talk to him, he doesn't say anything. He's oblivious. He's at no perception. He has shut down. So that's the scale of identity. Any questions?
No questions on that. Very clear.
Okay. So this is really important. You need to know where you are on this scale and catch yourself if you start to descend. So let's say you're in a relationship and then you're thinking about fooling around with this other girl behind your girlfriend's back. Okay. You're uncertain. That's not good. Means your perception has deteriorated. How do you fix this? Improve your perception. Pay some attention to your girlfriend. Talk to her. See what she thinks. See what she says. See what she does. See what she wants. See, and then you'll stop being indecisive, and you go back to being contrite, where you say, "Here's flowers. Here's a box of candy. Let's go out to a nice restaurant." See, which is what a contrite person would do. So this is really useful for yourself and for others. If you see somebody who's low on this scale, don't mess with them. Just stay away from them. Realize, depending on what level it is, if they're low enough, there's nothing you can do for them. Unless perhaps you are the person's psychotherapist, which obviously doesn't apply for most people. So that's it.
Very good. I think we got time. We'll do one more here. Scale of evaluation.
Okay. So this is an extremely volatile scale. You can watch people move on this scale. You can move on this by the minute or by the hour. So guy comes into the room at 4, 15 minutes later, he's at 3. It's extremely common. The opposite extreme of this is something like the scale of basic purposes, which we covered earlier, for which most people stay at one level for an entire lifetime. More than 90% of the people are at a certain level and it never changes. It's not that it can't change, it can change, but it's not easy. It is a persistent trait. This is the opposite extreme, where you have people moving up and down these scales fairly easily. So when a politician speaks to you or a preacher speaks to you, he's trying to move you on this scale. That's what he's trying to do. And very often they succeed. So a guy goes, let's say, to a certain church, he attends the service, he's neutral. Never been there before, he's impartial, right? So then he hears what the minister has to say. He says, yeah, I accept this. See, he's condoning it now. He's gone up a level. So that minister has succeeded with this person. Or let's say you go out on a date with a girl, right? What are you trying to do? You're trying to change her evaluation. You're trying to move her up the scale. Now, if she moves down the scale, she says, this guy's a dud. I'm not going out with him again. See, if you move her up the scale, she says, yeah, I can see going out with this guy again. She's moved up to level 3. So this is a linear scale, meaning there's no apparent congruence between levels 1 and 7. It's a gradual scale, meaning this moves in a very intuitive way gradually from level to level. So you can be in between 4 and 5 or in between 3 and 4. You can watch somebody gradually go from one level to the next. And it's a specific scale, meaning it really makes no sense to try to find somebody on this scale in a general way. It's like dividing something by 0. It's undefined. You need a context. So how does the person evaluate football? How does he evaluate soccer? How does he evaluate ice hockey? How does he evaluate swimming? So you can talk to a guy and say, well, what do you think about baseball? Oh, I love baseball. See, this guy's at level 1. Avidity. But if you say, well, what do you think about ice hockey? They'll say, I don't like ice hockey. I don't want to have anything to do with the cold. I'm not going any place where there's ice. And so he's maybe down at 5 about ice hockey. See? So this tells you a lot about the person. So if you're going to bring somebody onto your softball team, you want somebody who's high on the scale, right? So you're talking to your friend, and you see that he likes softball. He's at maybe 3. And you say, well, why don't you come down and play with us? Okay. See? And then he plays a game and he becomes up to level 2 where unanimity. He's unanimous with the team. Unanimity means one mind. He's of one mind with the team. See? So he's moved up. So this is really useful in figuring out Who do you want on your team and who do you want not on your team? Obviously, it's not just sports, it could be anything. So let's say you're a Christian and you bump into some girl who hates Christians. Is this somebody you want to go out with? I don't think so. You just go to the next girl. Now, you could try to move her up on the scale of Christianity. Well, why are you so invalidative of Christians, you see? And you might be able to move her up to neutrality after you talk to her. And then you can say, well, look, would you like to go out on a date? See, because now she's impartial. She's not saying you're an idiot because you're a Christian. You see? So you can use this to bring people up or to stay away from people who are low. And after you bring somebody up, then they become more useful to you in that context. So, for example, I have three sisters. Two of them are conservatives, and one of them is a liberal. Now, I get along fine with all three of them. I just don't get into it. I don't make it an issue. I'm not going to try to change their minds one way or the other. That's not what this is about. This is about family. How's cousin Joe? Oh, you saw him. Oh, good. How's his wife? You see, that's got nothing to do with the election. So you can compartment things and you can see, okay, well, this person is this way, this person is that way. I'm not going to get into it. So you could have guys on a bowling team. Some of them are conservatives and some of them are liberals. Doesn't matter. They might not even know. Doesn't matter. What you want to know is, have you ever bowled a 300 game? Yes, you're on the team. You see, you don't care if you voted for Obama or not, one way or the other. So that's a smart way to use the scale. So it's about compartmentation. So what are we measuring here? Look at the dotted vertical line. At the top of this, we have love, and at the bottom, we have hate. When a person is at level 1, he loves the thing, right? So like you say to a person, how do you feel about dogs? He says, yeah, I like dogs. That's not somebody who's at level 1 with dogs. If you say, how do you like dogs? He says, oh, I just love dogs. He is at level 1. He's an avid dog lover. Okay? Or you might say to him, well, what do you think about cats? Nah, I don't like cats. See, he's like at level 5 regarding cats. So you're not going to give this guy a cat for a present. See? Now, you might be able to talk him into liking cats. You can say, well, I have a cat. He's really cool. He's smart and I don't have to take him out for a walk. And he's quiet. And the guy says, well, yeah, I understand. That makes some sense. Well, maybe cats are okay. You see? So you say, come over and meet my cat. Now, that might sound dopey to you, but I have friends who had cats. They invited me to their house after I'd known them for years. And I saw the cat. I said, yeah, this is really a cool cat. The guy says, yeah, I know. See, he loves the cat. So that's sort of like bringing me up the scale regarding that particular cat. So I probably don't love him the way the owner loves him, but I'm certainly accepting him, which is level 3. So you see, I moved from neutrality. Well, before I went to this guy's house, I had never seen this cat. I was neutral. Even if he told me he had a cat, it didn't mean anything. But now I see the cat and I see how he acts and that he's really a nice cat. See? So I'm sort of condoning it. Yeah, I can see why you would want to have this cat. That's condoning it. So person comes into an area, any area, it could be, I don't necessarily mean a physiological area, more like a conceptual area. Like a guy, he's never been to a baseball game, he's never seen a baseball game, he's never played a baseball game, and you say to him, while you're visiting us from Africa, we have tickets to a baseball game. Why don't you come with us? We have a ticket for you. He says, okay. right? Just because he's being polite. So you all go to Dodger Stadium and here's the game going on, right? Now you watch this guy. Now, after maybe 3 or 4 innings, you might say to him, what do you think? See? Now he might say, I can see why people would like this. See, he's moved up to 3. He's accepting it. He's condoning it. But he might say, why would anybody want to watch this? This is boring. There are a lot of people who think that about baseball. They think it's boring. Okay? So he's discouraging you. He's disagreeing with your enthusiasm for this. It could go either way. So you could watch the guy, by after you leave the game, you say, well, what did you think of today's outing? He might say, this is great. Let's do it again. He's come up to level 2. Or he might say, look, do me a favor. Don't take me on any of your outings anymore, okay? That's level 6. He's invalidating you. He's refuting your contention that this would be something he would like. So a person going down from neutral, first he will discourage it, meaning he disagrees with you. Then he will invalidate it. He's not merely discouraging you, he's invalidating you. He says, there's got to really be something wrong with you to want to do this. He's refuting your enthusiasm. And if it goes down another level, he condemns you. You are a bad person. He loathes this thing. Now, let me give you a context where this makes sense, because this might not seem real to you. Let's say a person gets into the subject of abortion. He's neutral, right? He's a young person, he doesn't really know anything about it. So he finds out what it is, and he says, well, this doesn't seem like such a good thing. See, he's discouraging you. Now he learns that there's a whole contingent of anti-abortion people in the country. They have clubs and groups and things, and political representatives. So he learns about it, and he starts invalidating. He says, yes, this is a bad thing. This is not something I would ever allow my daughter to do. And then if he keeps going down the scale, he comes to condemnation. He says, people who have abortions are bad people. He loathes them. He hates this. This is an extremist. This is the kind of guy who will blow up an abortion clinic. Or he go the other way. See, he doesn't know anything. He finds out about it. You say, well, you see, sometimes there are reasons why a person, medical reasons, sociological reasons why a person might not want to have the child. Oh, I see. I could see. So he's at level 3, see? Then you say to him, well, a lot of people, there are laws against this. Really, laws against it? Yeah. And so, I think people should be able to make that choice themselves. He says, I agree with you. That's level 2. That's agreement. See? Now, if he goes further, he goes into encouraging abortions. He's avid. Now, you might say, well, who would encourage? Well, there are people who encourage abortion. They're avid about abortion. These are the people who they're radicals. They're the pro-abortion radicals. They are avid. Yes, abortion on demand for anybody, for free. Okay? So, see this, that's how you could go up and down this scale. So, this can happen with any subject. And if you talk to people and watch people, particularly over a period of time, you'll see them move up and down this. For example, Republicans used to be much more pro-war than they are now. There are a lot of Republicans now who discourage it. No, we don't want to go to war. We want a candidate who's going to not get us into any more wars. See, that's a change. But now there are a lot of Democrats who are pro-war. Yes, we want to have military spending. We want to send support to Ukraine. See? And well, the Democrats used to be the anti-war party. So you can see these groups or individuals have changed. Well, saying that the group changed is kind of an abstraction because it's just a collection of people. So you still do have anti-war Democrats, and you still do have pro-war Republicans. But the polling on this has changed. So you're really talking about individuals, which is why this is an individual scale. Any questions?
No questions. Very clear and seemingly easy to understand and can relate across the board. Very good.
Right. So this is really useful. Listen to what people say. They will tell you. You know, went out with a girl once who I found out years later was anti-Christian. I was raised as a Christian. I didn't say anything about it. She was like down at 6, invalidating Christians. She would literally invalidate them. And I didn't say a word. Now, well, I made no attempt to broach the subject because we were in a relationship and I didn't want to blow everything up. But it's good to know so you know when to shut up. You know, if this person, if this person is an avid conservative and you're not, just don't discuss it, and then you can preserve the relationship. Right? There's a guy who you play tennis with, and you find out that he voted for David Duke. Well, just don't say anything. You don't have to argue with him about it. You want to play tennis with the guy. He's fun to play tennis with. So, I've known people like this. I knew a club owner once who I used to be in the music business, and I played for him several times. Very nice guy, friendly, always smiling, easy to work with. I never had a club owner easier than that. And I found out he was a fascist. In fact, he may even have been a Nazi. But that's just because I was around the club for a long time and it sort of came to me. See? So I didn't say anything to him. I don't want to imperil my status. He loved my band. He kept bringing us back. So, all right, I just didn't say anything about that's the right way to handle it. Somebody who's dopey will make an issue of it, and you lose a client. So, it depends on the circumstance. I once met a girl in class. Turns out she was a Buddhist. I had never known any Buddhists. This was long ago in New York. There were very few Buddhists in New York at the time. Very few. And I said, "Oh, really? Yeah. Yeah, well, you should find out." Okay. So she sort of got me up to acceptance. Would you like to come to a prayer meeting? Okay. Now, the reason I went there was she was a beautiful girl and I wanted to go out with her. So I said, well, this is a good way. I'll just accept her offer. Everything was fine. We went and it was interesting. It was educational. I accepted it. I didn't see anything wrong with it. So she sort of moved me up to 3. See? So there's a variety of ways that you could use this to your advantage.
Very good. Well, Jim, as always, thank you. Thank you so much. This was very insightful and very clear for people, I think, across the board to be able to see where they fit on the scale and then how they can apply the scale to their life. And again, I look forward to continuing our journey into learning more about Septemics as we dive more into the topic and more scales and learn more from you in our next video.
Right. And in closing, I just want to say there's only so much you're going to get from this lecture. The reason it's a book is it's a new subject. You have to study the book. There's a lot of stuff in the book that really get you to learn it, to make it your own, so that it becomes an asset in your life. And that's not going to happen unless you have the book. But it's available in hardbound, softbound, and ebook. If you really don't want to spend money, you can get an ebook.
And I have to say, having been studying your book in connection with these lectures that we're going through now has been very insightful and helpful, especially being able to read it at one level, to study it, and then let that kind of ruminate in my brain for a little bit, and then we have this discussion later on. Then I can reconnect that information and see how it can apply. Not to mention, I'm a visual and audio type of learner. So reading gives me one way to interact with the material, but if I can see it or hear it, that gives me another way to interact with it. And I'll tell you, by having the charts, like that we're going through right now, is very beneficial for me to be able to see how that works across the different levels, as opposed to just reading those things. And then on top of that, connecting that with the lecture that we're going through now really solidifies the information for me. So I find this very helpful. And again, I truly am interested in continuing our journey as we learn more and discover more about Septemics. Until next time, we'll be back as we again continue our deep dive into Septemics. Join us then.